Welcome back to the 2025 APAICS Technology Summit. I'm your host, Tanya Layden, Vice President of Development and External Affairs. Our next panel is Future of Work, Upskilling for the Digital Economy. As workplaces and civic systems become increasingly reliant on digital tools, 46% of AA and NHPI communities report lacking the technical skills to fully participate. This panel will explore workforce development solutions, including short-term training, upskilling, and digital literacy initiatives. The conversation will highlight successful models that boost economic mobility and equip communities for the jobs of the future. It's now my honor to introduce KPAC First Vice Chair, Congressman Mark Takano, who represents California's 39th Congressional District. Congressman Takano serves on the Committee on Education and Workforce and is co-chair of the Congressional Maker Caucus. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Takano to the summit.
Hello, I'm Congressman Mark Takano, First Vice Chair of the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus. As our workplaces and civic systems become more reliant on digital tools, we have to make sure that no community is left behind. That's why your discussion today is so critical. According to recent findings, 46% of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities report lacking the technical skills necessary to fully participate in our digital economy. That is nearly half of a rapidly growing and diverse population facing a barrier to opportunity. The future of work is digital, and access to digital literacy, upskilling, and workforce development opportunities is essential to upward mobility. When we invest in these areas, we empower individuals to compete for in-demand jobs. We support small businesses trying to modernize, and we strengthen our economy from the ground up. In Congress, I've been proud to support efforts that invest in workforce development programs tailored to our communities, programs that are culturally and linguistically appropriate, community-based, and focused on real pathways to good jobs. We know that one-size-fits-all solutions don't work. That's why we need to continue to elevate local models that are working, whether it is partnerships with community colleges, apprenticeship programs in tech fields, or nonprofits providing in-language and in-culture digital literacy training. While the current administration launches attacks against these programs, I take heart in this group assembled by APAICS to ensure that this issue is not forgotten. Know that I, along with our KPAC members, are with you to make sure that the AA NHPI community is able to participate in every part of the economy. Together, we can close the digital divide and build a future where everyone, regardless of zip code, language, or background, can thrive. Thank you.
Now, I would like to introduce Maryland Secretary of Labor, Portia Wu. Secretary Wu is an experienced leader who has spent her career developing and implementing policies that benefit America's workers. Before joining the Moore administration, Secretary Wu was Assistant Secretary for Employment and Training at the United States Department of Labor. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Wu.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to APAICS for hosting this summit. I'm Portia Wu, the Maryland Secretary of Labor. I'm honored to be with so many leaders who are working to ensure Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities can be fully engaged in the digital economy. We know the challenge. Nearly half of our communities report lacking the digital skills needed to fully participate in today's workforce. This isn't about any lack of talent. It's about AAPI communities facing a gap in access to learning, advancement, and opportunity. A major question before all of us now is whether AI is going to expand those opportunities or close them off. Our job is to ensure that AI becomes a bridge to opportunity, not a barrier, because every worker and every community deserves the chance to thrive. This means more than just creating a new class of AI technical experts. It means broadening AI literacy so all workers know when and how to responsibly use these new tools. We must also understand the needs of different communities and ensure that we're taking those diverse perspectives into account as we train these models and adopt them. I'm proud to say that here in the state of Maryland, we're jumping in with both feet. We've invested to establish cyber ranges at all 16 of our state's community colleges, and we're focusing on internships and apprenticeships to provide real-world, hands-on learning experiences and to connect a broader range of people to these opportunities and good jobs. Most importantly, all these programs are about investments in people. We're celebrating everyone's talent and potential and providing resources for economic mobility and long-term lifetime career success. Today, equipping everyone with the right foundational AI and digital skills is more critical than ever to ensure a fair shot at opportunity. Here's what I think. The future of work isn't just about coding or deploying AI tools. It's about making sure everyone in the workforce, including those in the AA and Native Hawaiian and PI communities, can adapt to a constantly changing world, whether they're just starting out or building a career. Upskilling for the digital economy is not just a workforce strategy, it's a commitment to equity. It's a promise that our communities will not just consume technology, but help shape it and reap the benefits of it. I'm grateful that APAICS is focusing on this critical work to upskill workers, and I hope that others will join us in this conversation. Thank you again for including me today. Look forward to the ideas and partnerships that will come out of this conversation.
I'm pleased to introduce our moderator, Linda Pham. Linda is a manager of government affairs and public policy at S&P Global, where she directs the company's PAC strategy and leads internal and external policy communications to strengthen engagement with policymakers and employees. She serves on the board of the Asian American Action Fund and has been recognized by the National Institute for Lobbying and Ethics as a 2024 top lobbyist. Please join me in welcoming Linda and our esteemed panelists to the summit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for tuning into our panel. As Tanya mentioned, my name is Linda Pham, and I will be your moderator today. Our conversation on the future of work and upskilling for the digital economy couldn't be more timely. As workplaces, classrooms, and even government services rely more and more on digital tools, nearly half of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities say they don't have the technical skills to fully participate. This gap isn't just about technology, it's about access to opportunity, economic mobility, and making sure our communities can keep up in an economy that's changing faster than ever. Today's discussion will explore how we can bridge that divide through workforce development, education, short-term training, digital literacy programs, and really meeting people where they are. We're fortunate to be joined by three leaders who bring perspectives from government, industry, and the community level. Assemblymember Mike Fong represents California's 49th district and serves as the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee and chair of the Asian American and Pacific Islander Legislative Caucus. Assemblymember Fong has been a lifelong public servant and former LA Community College District trustee, where he has championed access to education, workforce development, and language access across California. Cheryl Young is the head of policy research at Doordash, where she leads a team studying the economic policy factors that shape local economies and flexible work. She previously served as a senior economist at Zillow Group and has spent her career analyzing how policy impacts communities and economic mobility. And last but not least, we are joined by Victor Yang, who leads public policy at the National Asian Pacific Center on Aging, or NAPCA, where he focuses on ensuring older adults have equitable access to resources and opportunities. He previously served in the Biden administration on the Capitol Hill, bringing both federal and community perspectives to the work of advancing AA and HPI inclusion. Thank you all for being here. We're really lucky to have such a range of perspectives on this topic, so let's just dive right in. Despite the digital economy reshaping how we work, how we learn, and really support our families, 46% of AA and HPI communities report lacking the technical skills to fully participate. Let's open this first question to all from your vantage point, whether in policy, corporate workforce programs, or community-based training. What do you see as the biggest barrier to digital upskilling? Assemblymember Fong, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you so much, Linda and APAICS, for hosting this tremendous summit here today. Really appreciate your leadership in this space. We know we're at the cusp of a new industrial revolution with AI and other technologies that are changing the way we work. And the institutions that train and educate the workforce need to adapt. And that can be very challenging. As we know, some of the institutions can be very slow-moving at times, but especially as the needs of workers are constantly changing and in our evolving landscape here in terms of technology, there needs to be more coordination between our institutions of higher learning and also employers who will now hire not just for today, but for the next year and 5 years from now. And I'm proud to join our panelists here today, Cheryl and Victor, and look forward to today's conversation. We know that there's gaps in also foundational digital skill sets. Many in our diverse Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities face inequities of all kinds, including access to resources. And in order to develop the skills necessary, we need to ensure that our diverse AA and HPI communities have access to trainings, mentoring, and coursework that will help them develop the skills that they need. And also resources need to be culturally and linguistically accessible for our diverse communities. And I look forward to today's conversation. Thank you.
Member Victor, we'll pass it to you. What do you think is the biggest barrier to digital upskilling?
Thanks, Linda, for that very important question. And thank you, APAICS, for having NAPCA on today. For those of you who don't know, NAPCA is a 501c3, and we actually specialize in helping older adults find jobs through a senior community service employment program, also known as CSEP, as well as one of our digital skills classes, which helps older adults upskill and learn new skills that they need to thrive in the digital economy. And one of the things that we have found is a big challenge for working in the community is that a lot of older adults aren't aware of the big resources that are available in today's economy. And so a lot of times what we do is we work in these small classes and educate older adults about their opportunities. We teach them how to use a computer. We teach them how to integrate themselves in the digital economy. We even educate them about how they can use apps now to find jobs. And so a lot of them find really cool opportunities in the gig economy, such as dashing for Doordash or driving for Uber. And they found that these opportunities are really great because a lot of times they're caring for their grandchildren, and they find that, hey, like, you know, when we send them off to school or we send them off to daycare, like we have some free time, and perhaps instead of going home and doing house chores, we can also find opportunities to work a little bit and help contribute to the family. But the challenge is getting these older adults to kind of adapt to using this technology, because a lot of them aren't aware. And that's why the work that we do at NAPCA is so important, because we are out there in the community in places where there are heavy Asian American older adult populations, helping to educate them so that they know these resources are available. And I think also one of the big challenges for the population that we serve is that not only are they learning how to integrate themselves and find work in the digital economy, but there's also a lot of times a language and cultural barrier. And so that's the thing that we are also addressing when we're helping them kind of adapt to today's very different, very competitive digital economy.
Cheryl, it looks like Victor teed you up when he mentioned the gig economy. From a corporate lens, what do you see as the biggest barrier to digital upskilling?
Yeah, thanks so much, Linda, for that question, and for APAICS for having us and, you know, allowing Doordash to come with our perspective as well. I think from my vantage point, working on policy research at Doordash, the biggest barrier isn't always just access. It's actually really understanding how to address needs that will drive impact. And even from our side, as we work with our communities, our dashers, our merchants, you know, technology is evolving so quickly, even if we work in the tech sector, that it's really easy to lose sight of what these different communities actually need. And so our job, I find, is to figure out how to be the best advocates, even in the corporate space, for our audiences and communities, and taking the time to listen, to identify where the real gaps are, and then really to understand where our boundaries are, and what we can't provide. And so for us, it's really, you know, reaching out to find partners that can help fill those gaps. And that's why I'm so excited about this conversation, is to really hear about what others are doing in the space to see where we can start driving more impact.
Cheryl, so then let's talk about what others are doing in this space to drive impact. Assemblymember Fong, you chair the Higher Education Committee in California, and you mentioned coordination with workforce. What role do higher education and community colleges play in preparing workers for their jobs?
Linda, for that question. We know that the power and promise of higher education to transform lives here in California is so critical, especially for our diverse immigrant communities. And higher education in California, with our University of California system, Cal State University system, and community colleges, serving over 2 million students each year. We know that here in California, we're leading the way to ensure that our students access all systems of higher education and that they have the opportunity to develop tomorrow's digital skills. For example, At the California State University, the nation's largest public four-year system, all students and faculty have access to OpenAI's ChatGPT. We know that this access is also a matter of equity, since some students were able to pay for the tool while others were not. And so we want to continue to make sure we continue to expand access to these types of tools. But also, community colleges play a critical role for the workforce of higher education here in California, especially our workforce training programs. Recently, California signed an MOU with NVIDIA to bring new AI resources into our community colleges. And we have over 100 community colleges in California to make sure that we're including it also in the curriculum and certifications, but also looking at hardware, software, AI workshops, and more. This will help open up new career pathways for our students, for our educators, for learners to learn new skills and to advance their skill sets. And I was very proud that yesterday, actually, the governor signed the California Education Interagency Coordinating Council legislation, my bill, along with Senator Padilla, AB 1098, that aligns California's education and workforce systems to ensure that the billions of dollars that the state of California invests each and every year into higher education and workforce programs are not siloed, but also more coordinated. This bill was just signed yesterday and it will help address unmet labor market needs and also address equity gaps into our workforce. We'll have principals from our different systems at the conversation table and really making sure that we continue to uplift our diverse immigrant communities in these challenging times. And finally, one other piece of legislation I wanted to uplift is Assembly Bill 323 that here in California, strong workforce funds that are used in our community colleges that come down the pipeline that allows our community colleges to use funds with employers for paid internships and apprenticeships. And so these are some of the ways that we're trying to lead here in California in terms of the work ahead. Thank you, Linda.
That sounds incredible, Assemblymember Fong. We know that passing legislation can be difficult, so we appreciate the work that you're doing in California to lead the way. So, Vane, what upskilling initiatives are working for the communities you support at NAPCO?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking that question. So as I mentioned before, NAPCA does a senior community service employment program. We do it all around the country, but we're mostly focusing in Washington State, in California, including in Assemblymember Fong's district and the Monterey Park area. We have a site there. And what we do is we get into the community and we have this employment training program that's administered by the United States Department of Labor. And through it, we find a full-time role for a low-income older adult, 55 and above. And we get them back into kind of, the workforce, because a lot of these older adults, they're struggling to find jobs, they're struggling to build skills. And so we get them back into the workforce and we kind of just, get them in the rhythm of working again. And then from there, we start to find, hey, like, what are some opportunities while you're working this job where we can continue to build skills, but also find you a way to transition to something a little bit more permanent. And I think that's when our digital skills classes come into play, because those classes are helping older adults understand how the digital economy works and really building their skills within the digital economy. Because what we found is that for a lot of these older adults, they know how to use their phones. Smartphones are everywhere. We all have one. But they're kind of, not aware of a lot of the other resources that are on their phones, such as a lot of these apps where you can find gig work, where you can find opportunities to work on demand. And so a lot of times we're helping them to educate them on, hey, like, these things exist. And it's not like once you download it and you sign up, like, you have to work a certain amount of time. A lot of times it can be as easy as, hey, I just want to turn it on, and if I get a job, I get a job. If I don't, then that's fine. I'll keep it on until I get something, and then I can work that job if I choose to. It gives them a lot of increased flexibility, and it also helps them to kind of build more skills. And so, like, that's why it's so critical for us to continue these programs, because we have a system in place where we're helping to get these older adults back into the workforce, and also understanding how to use their phones, their computers to find work, because just being able to work is very important, but also being able to find work so that you can stay employed is also equally as important. And it's more important than ever now, especially with all of the changes in Medicaid and the work requirements that are going to be upon all of us, including the state of California, state of Washington. Those requirements are, things that older adults will have to hit if they're under 65. And so they're importance of finding work is more than ever.
The resources you're mentioning sound hard to find even for folks who are tech fluent. So it's great to hear that NAPCA is addressing the root cause of simply just knowing what's out there and what's not out there. We've now heard about solutions from the legislative side and the community angle. Cheryl, from a corporate perspective, what solutions are you seeing?
That's a great question. I think from a corporate perspective at DoorDash, we think about upskilling across our ecosystem. So that includes Dashers who power our platform through the deliveries they make, as well as our merchant partners who really are, driving the local commerce in communities. And, at the core of our business is really our mission, which is to empower local economies. And a lot of that is facilitated by connecting consumers with merchants, enabling people to earn on their own terms. And for Dashers, I'm going to highlight a partnership, and then I'm going to highlight some internal tools that we've created as part of the business. So for Dashers, flexibility and access are everything. And I think that's some of the things that Victor alluded to with some of this gig work. And then so to that end, I think starting in 2021, we partnered with the National Urban League to create a digital financial literacy platform called Goal Up. This was for Dashers. This was to help, bring those like really trusted, great resources that National Urban League has on financial literacy to Dashers who may not necessarily have access to those resources. That program has since evolved into what is now called the Virtual Financial Empowerment Center. And this summer, they launched a mobile app. So not only can users, get all of these tools like they used to, but they can do it wherever they are. And that's very much in line with how we think about Dashing, which is really having those earning opportunities and meeting people where they are and giving them those real practical tools for financial empowerment. And then so the example on the merchant side is that many of our merchant partners are small business owners. And as you can imagine, they're kind of wearing every hat imaginable. They're managing staff, they're managing operations, inventory, trying to bring more customers to their businesses. And they're just, these operators are just so overwhelmed with just the day-to-day. And so what we wanted to do was bring AI tools to make their lives easier and help solve those like really small tasks so that they can really focus on their core work. And I think all of us sort of recognize that the promise of AI is huge. Everybody's talking about it. Everywhere you turn is AI. And even as somebody who sits at their desk in a technology company, it's overwhelming. But at the same time, nobody really wants to miss out, right? If you don't know enough about AI, if you're not using it, you feel like you're being left behind. So I think what DoorDash has felt is that our job is to make it approachable for people that might not necessarily have space or time to think about AI, or figure out what tools are going to work for them, and to really help identify what could be most useful so that the technology is working for them. And so some examples of those tools are just, item description generators. So you don't have to sit and think about the best copy to write when you're describing like a meal or a dish or, whatever it is. And even just an AI powered camera that helps your pictures look better of your items. And this really helps showcase food items online faster and a lot less friction. So I think we're continuing to explore that as a business through the products, as well as trying to explore ways that merchants can access the AI tools themselves and help build what they need for themselves.
Can we agree more? Augmenting is a descriptor word that I think is really fitting when folks talk about AI and how it can make people's lives easier so they can, like you said, save their time and their energy on more important tasks. Cheryl, let's just dive deeper into the tools and the partnerships that work for DoorDash. You mentioned meeting people where they are and the flexible work. What lessons do you think other industries can learn from DoorDash's model?
So, that's a really good question. I think I just want to kind of highlight a little bit about Dashers and who they are, why do they come to the platform, and a little bit about maybe second part of your question about what industry could learn. And I think when we talk about dashers generally, those people that are delivering your food, your groceries, your essentials, we're really talking about an incredibly diverse community. So we survey our dashers every year, and the survey this year, what we found really underscores how meaningful flexibility can be and the many reasons this range of people are drawn to this work. So let me just throw a few stats out there. Half of dashers actually already have a full or part-time job. So this work is often really complementary income and not a replacement. And beyond those people that are working full or part-time jobs, there's other people that have other responsibilities at home that I'll get to in a little bit. So it really fills those gaps, between paychecks, between stages of life, and also, between other responsibilities like caregiving. So, in terms of caregivers, almost 40% of dashers are parents to young ones under 18. And more than a quarter actually are regularly care for a family member or friend or adult child over 18. So that could be an aging parent, that could be an adult child, that could be somebody living with chronic illness. And 22% of dashers themselves live with a disability or chronic condition, which is really interesting. And I think, I wanted to address a little bit about what Victor brought up about older adults. We see that 22% of dashers, I think some people don't know this about the gig economy, 22% of dashers are 55 or older. And almost 1 in 10 are retired. So, what that tells us is that, people are using dashing to supplement fixed income. They're using it to keep up with rising costs on the fixed income. Some of them are using it to stay active in general, and also just to stay connected to their communities on their own schedule. So, I think we talk about flexibility as being a perk a lot of times, especially when we talk about traditional work, but it's not really a perk, here. I think it's what makes work possible for some of these groups. It allows them to earn when and how it fits into their lives, not sort of the other way around, thinking about what is your work schedule. And, I think the lesson to your other point for other industries is that, when you start to design work around people's real lives, their lived experiences, that's when you really unlock participation from groups that would otherwise be left out, right? These older adults, these caregivers, these people managing physical and mental health challenges. And these are sort of the really important opportunities that I think we want to preserve and encourage.
Cheryl, I've actually never thought about flexibility being something that's what makes work possible and not just a perk. That is eye-opening. Victor, when you look at the older adults you work with, do you see the opportunities for them to benefit from the kind of flexible work Cheryl just described? I mean, what does this look like in practice for you?
I completely agree with the fact that the flexibility aspect is really important, especially as I mentioned for older adults who are caregivers, but also for people who are caring for older adults, right? Like NAPCA, we don't only just represent older adults, but we also represent some of their caregivers. And what we found is that some of them really need flexible work in order to care for their loved ones as they age. But another thing that I wanted to point out that was very interesting about just the use of digital technology in the gig economy or just work in general is that it really helps with a lot of the language issues that sometimes our community is facing, right? Because like with things such as, I'm just going to use Uber as an example, right? Like the Uber app, like a lot of times, like, you can just use it and it will connect you with somebody for a ride, and like everything is done through the app. And so from like a language perspective, right, for a lot of older adults who are immigrated later in their lives where English is a little bit more challenging, they can just use this app to find work. And Uber kind of takes care of a lot of the customer service aspects of it, which makes it easier for them so they don't have to interface as much with the customer, right? And that's something that we really need to address when we look for finding jobs for older adults in our community. A lot of the times they have this language barrier, and we will work to ameliorate it through our digital skills classes or through our older worker training programs. But like we found that technology can really augment and really help a lot of these older adults with, being able to do a job basically. So I think that flexibility aspect is great. But also, as I mentioned before, the language aspect is also really beneficial as well.
Great. So we've now talked about flexibility and how work itself is changing, but part of that shift also depends on how people gain the digital skills to participate in this new economy, especially for those who didn't grow up with technology. Victor, you just mentioned that digital skills classes at NAPCA have helped older adults bridge that gap. What approaches have you found most effective in helping seniors build that confidence with technology?
Yeah, small classes, like what we found is that when we first did our classes, we had like one teacher and like 20 older adults. And I think our first pilot class was in Seattle. It was a really big struggle, right? Because a lot of these older adults, they weren't used to just turning on a computer. They're used to doing most of their things on the phone. And as we all know, the phone is a great tool, but there's certain things like a Zoom call that's hard to do on a phone. You want to do it on a computer. And so we found that smaller classes are really helpful. What we've also done is we actually partnered with the University of Washington to bring in students. A lot of them are international students that spoke, their native language and English. And so they could work with older adults in their native language. That would really help to kind of ameliorate the language issues. And then a lot of times, we've worked with different partners to kind of share for older adults different resources. A lot of times we work with city and state partnerships. So we haven't had the benefit of working with California yet, but we have worked with Washington State on a lot of our initiatives. And we hope to kind of expand that partnership too. Those are all kind of great ways to make the classes more engaging for our older adults, and also, to give them that help so that they are able to upskill in the digital economy.
I know that these classes are geared toward older adults, but I wouldn't be surprised if folks of all ages follow up to learn more and maybe participate in these classes. Assemblymember Fong, you talked about how higher education can drive upskilling. When you hear examples like Victor's community-based digital literacy programs, what can state or local governments do to better connect those folks to workforce systems?
Thank you so much, Linda, for that question. And thank you, Victor, for doing the programs in our district as well in Monterey Park. And we'd love to see how we can partner, obviously, in California as well. But we know the important work and efforts of programs like Victor's community-based digital literacy programs that are amazing programs. Programs in my district as well, where many Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander elderly residents who are immigrants or have limited English proficiency can definitely benefit from these types of programs. And this is definitely one of the civil rights issues of our day, is language access for our diverse AA and HPI communities. And while digital tools may sometimes lower language access barriers, they can also create them, as we've heard, if these digital tools are not designed with different languages, needs in mind. And this is even more critical, especially in these challenging times in our diverse immigrant communities. As a state government, I've authored in the legislature, I've authored legislation to address these barriers in language access. I authored Assembly Bill 1638, which deals with emergency alerts to make sure that when there's a natural disaster, an emergency, or anything that's mass tragedy. This came out of the shooting in Monterey Park. I'm grateful to my team member, Jennifer Tang, and team for bringing this idea forward. But that shows that when there's a emergency and make sure that we get information out in language, that a population that speaks another language, 5% or more that speaks a different language, that the public agency makes sure and ensures that that information gets out in language. And we know that we need to continue to do more in this space. And that's why I authored Assembly Bill 413 this year as well, the Housing and Community Development Department legislation, to really make sure that our housing and CDD department is making sure that information is available in different languages as well to meet the diverse needs of not just API communities here in California, but our diverse immigrant communities here in California. But we know that we need to continue to do more as digital upskilling happens, that language barriers do not stand in the way. So I look forward to working with everyone here and my colleagues to continue to build out language access here in California. And as chair of the API Legislative Caucus this year, one of our top priorities was to expand language access. And that was a priority of my colleagues. And this is something we need to continue to put more funds towards these efforts with our state departments and agencies to serve the community. Thank you.
I could not agree more. As a fluent English speaker, some of these digital tools and applications themselves feel like a different language. So I can only imagine folks who have limited English proficiency and the challenge they have with just learning, much less maximizing these tools. Now, we have heard from each of you the approach on how education, the private sector, and community based programs can support our communities. If we want to create an ecosystem that truly supports AA and HPI communities in the digital economy, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for partnership across all sectors? Cheryl, I'll kick this off to you first.
Such an important question. And honestly, I think the biggest opportunity for partnership starts with exactly what we're doing here, kind of creating this space, more space for conversations like this one, where we're bringing together community leaders, nonprofits, private sector, coming with sort of each of our own different kind of expertise. And speaking for myself, I think that also really means being really humble about what I don't know and being intentional about learning from these organizations, who have just deep trust and relationships with AA and NHPI communities. So, what Victor's doing, I think just knowing the barriers, really understanding the cultural nuances and the opportunities that can unlock real impact. On the flip side, I would say, the private sector has things they can offer as well, which is usually scale, sometimes resources, technology that can help really amplify some of the reach of those community-based programs, especially when it comes to, digital literacy, access to tools, economic empowerment. So to me, partnership sometimes isn't just about the funding or developing these programs. It's about trying to find ways to kind of co-create things with each other. It's about kind of really trying to answer that question around, how do we design solutions together that are going to really reflect these, lived experiences of the people we're, trying to serve. So I think if we can keep creating spaces like this and having that dialogue where where kind of this shared understanding leads to shared action, that's how we keep building this ecosystem that truly supports our A and HPI communities in the digital economy.
Great. And Cheryl, I know I don't have to tell you, but the corporate sector and data especially can really be a powerful friend. It's knowing what is working and what isn't working, how we can improve, right? We have to know what places are low percentages and where we can fix and have more skills brought there. Victor, I'll hand it over to you now. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for partnership across sectors?
Completely echo everything that was said so far. I think that a strong public, private, and nonprofit partnership is really essential, and really listening to everyone's perspectives and what they bring to the table, will be a great way to kind of address the issue. I think one thing for me that I think is really core is also just understanding like the role that each individual group plays, and how their voice is like the kind of like the more expert voice, the voice that will give the best perspective. Because I think one of the big challenges with when NAPCA does a lot of work is that people don't really understand the community that we support. They don't really understand the language barriers. They don't really understand some of the cultural barriers. And so, when identifying partners, it's important to kind of understand like that perspective that they're bringing, and how key and how essential it is. Like a great example that I give all the time is like, a lot of people are not aware sometimes in the Asian American community, how like that planning for retirement is seen as, hey, it's like through your kids, right? A lot of times, I know friends who they have, older parent who immigrated to the U.S. and they say, oh, well, like I'm not really saving for retirement because my children are my retirement, right? And so like it's a really nuanced issue. It's cultural, right? It's also kind of economic. And so understanding that like, hey, like, there are groups, there are organizations that are kind of helping to address those cultural gaps, right? And this is so important for things such as upskilling, right? Because a lot of times, people have to realize, oh, there are opportunities for you to continue working, so that you can continue providing for like an older relative, someone who, wasn't really aware of the kind of like the retirement system in the U.S. And the opportunities to invest in retirement. So I think that that's like one of the things that's so important when you're doing these partnerships is just to understand every person's perspective and their angle and how they can kind of contribute.
Victor and Assemblymember Fong, you mentioned partnerships a few times. What do you see as the biggest opportunity for partnership across all three sectors?
So Lily, thank you so much. I think anything we can continue to build out partnerships and to leverage each other's expertise and resources for the greater good is critical. And Cheryl mentioned this earlier, but dialogues and conversations like this, the one that we've had here today, continue to amplify each other's strengths and resources to best support our diverse Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities in a rapidly changing landscape. A few years ago, I chaired the Ad Hoc Committee on Jobs and Economy at the LA Community College District, and there we partnered with Amazon and AWS to create the California Cloud Computing Workforce Project. And now here in California, we're going to continue to build those partnerships, as happened with tech companies, to bridge some of these digital gaps, the private-public partnerships that Victor's talked about as well. I mentioned some earlier, but the MOU between our community colleges and NVIDIA is one example there, and also our California State University partnership with OpenAI. And as we continue to build out our regional job training programs here in California, our regional consortium, there's definitely additional opportunities to continue to bring to bridge tech and also digital equity for our diverse API communities here in California. So I look forward to future conversations on how we can continue to build those partnerships across sectors to create jobs and to really support our diverse Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities in California.
Thank you, Assemblymember. I mean, it sounds like there's a lot of ongoing initiatives, programs, and bills in the works to give you the most optimism right now and about where we're headed. Assemblymember Fong, I'll let you start.
Yeah, we got to keep pushing in these challenging times here. I think hope in terms of working with our communities and really our parents, our grandparents came to this country. My dad was an immigrant. My grandfather immigrated, and really looking for greater opportunities. And the work, nature of the work, still how we train might look different, but the key driver for opportunity has not changed. And given the uncertain economic times that we're in, what gives me hope is all the progress that we made with our education institutions, companies, and community organizations that are being responsive to our needs of a rapidly changing landscape. We know there's a lot more work to be done, and this is a very fluid time in terms of jobs and economy in the next few years. But really look forward to partnering with everyone going forward and to make sure that we are looking at the greater good in terms of financial security and opportunity for our communities.
Victor, I'll hand it over to you. What is making you most optimistic?
I think what makes me really optimistic is the stories about how older adults are kind of integrating into the digital economy. My father and I actually share an Amazon account, and I recently been noticing he orders a lot of computer parts. He's a retired IT professional. And so I recently texted him. I was like, "Hey, like, are you like building a server, like, or building a computer as a side hobby?" And he goes, "Oh no, I actually found out how to use Yelp now, and I can find jobs through Yelp." And so I'm going to people's houses and helping them fix up their computers and setting up the computer systems. And like, it's just like a fun thing because he's retired and he's like kind of itching to get back into it. But he found like an opportunity to use Yelp now in order to find clients so that he can go to people's houses and help them with their computer builds. And so it was just like a nice story for me where it's like, oh my goodness, like it's like tying into the work that I'm doing, right? Helping older adults find opportunities so that they can contribute to the digital economy.
Victor and Cheryl, what is making you optimistic?
I think what I've been hearing here, and like you said, there are so many initiatives and programs underway that it's really heartening to hear that, the work is being done. And I think at the end of the day too, like upskilling, sometimes it's more than just this formal training. It's about having that access and confidence that people get and this sense of empowerment. So what I'm hearing is that these approaches are focused on, and this panel recognize all these things. So that these organizations and leaders are still connecting with communities to understand how to meet them where they are. And I think to the extent that Doordash and other corporate entities can be part of that process, I think is exciting.
Cheryl, and I know we're approaching time, so I want to wrap this up. And really leave a call to action because this wouldn't be a good learning webinar without that. So, what is one thing folks can do to help close the digital skills gap and build a more inclusive future work? Cheryl, you want to kick us off again?
Yeah, I think the one thing that folks can do to help close that skills gap is really just, you know, like talking to folks, like whether it's your parents or whether it's, you know, we have opportunity to speak to dashers and really understanding all the ways that, you know, people are feeling like they're not quite there. So again, I think I've said this before, but really just being open to, you know, what you don't know, and finding ways to make those connections for people.
Hey, thanks, Cheryl. Victor?
I think my call to action would be to continue working with your loved ones, especially if they're a little older, on how to kind of integrate themselves in the digital economy. As Assemblymember Fong, as well as Cheryl have mentioned, you know, technology is so rapid and it's constantly changing. And so one of the best things that you can do is to work with those who are a little bit older than you to kind of help them to understand the new technologies that are coming out.
Thanks, Victor. And Assemblymember Fong, would you like to close us out with your call to action?
Thank you so much, Linda, for that question. In terms of next steps and a call to action, really would encourage everyone here, and thank you to everyone who's listening, but also have conversations with your institutions of higher learning, have conversations with your policymakers at the local, state, and federal levels. Tell us what you need and how we can bridge these gaps. And here in California, we're going to continue to uplift those efforts, whether it's around language access, around the workforce training programs, or a coordinating body to bring institutions of higher learning together and business, and to really look at effective post-secondary education, job training programs as well. But it's even more critical than ever to support and continue to uplift our diverse needs of our Asian American, Native Hawaiian communities, and also encourage everyone to participate in town hall meetings. Here in California, our API Legislative Caucus will have a town hall meeting in Napa in November, and we'll do a few more next year as well. So I look forward to future conversations with everyone. And thank you so much again to Victor, Cheryl, and thank you, Linda and APAICS for convening us here today. Thank you.
Yes. And with that, we are at time. Thank you so much, Assemblymember Fong, Cheryl, and Victor, for sharing your insights, and to everyone watching for being part of this conversation. Today's discussion was a good reminder that digital inclusion is ultimately about people. Giving everyone the tools and confidence to succeed at work continues to evolve. Whether it's through state policy, corporate leadership, or community-based training, I hope today's conversation inspires new ideas for how each folk can bring these lessons into your own work and communities. And finally, thank you to APAICS for bringing us together for this important conversation.